So let's go ahead and move on to our other skill position. That's wide receiver. Wide receiver seems to be a position that has a lot of question marks around it. Feels like UGA is bringing back a lot of good players, but I don't know if you would consider any of them to be great. You see in that first wide receiver position, you've got RaRa Thomas and Colbie Young, the transfer portal pickup out of Miami. In that second wide receiver position, it seems it's going to be Dillon Bell with London Humphreys, another transfer portal pickup from Vanderbilt. And in the slot position, you've got Dominic Lovett and Anthony Evans, who we got the opportunity to see in not just the SEC championship, but also the Orange Bowl. Connor, you look at those 6 guys on the list. I know you love Dillon Bell. He seems to be the darling of this wide receiver group. But out of these 6 right here, apart from Dillon Bell, in your mind, who is going to be the person that ultimately has to step up?
I think RaRa Thomas is someone that's very interesting. A guy who came in as a transfer last year from Mississippi State and just had a real disaster. I would say maybe probably 6-7 months. And it wasn't until the Kentucky game where he started to show some things that he could possibly do. And then unfortunately he gets hurt against Tennessee with a foot injury that essentially sidelines him for the rest of the season. So I think this offseason is going to be really big for both him and Dominic Lovett. Lovett, Georgia's leading returning receiver there. And so you need to see, I think, because of the fact that those guys, they've been in this program for a year, they're not so new and fresh anymore. Those transfer receivers, as much as we're going to talk about Colbie Young and London Humphreys and Michael Jackson III, I think their presence as second-year players at Georgia is going to be significant, especially in working with Carson Beck and getting another year of chemistry and bonds developed between the two.
Yeah, I mean, interesting enough, 4 of the 6 guys on that slide were all transfers. Is that something that we potentially see as a trend moving forward, or do you think that UGA will focus more on wide receiver in the recruitment process?
I don't think Georgia wants it to be a trend, but I think they've just come to accept that this is the reality of this wide receiver position at Georgia. They're going to have to use the transfer portal. They're going to try and land guys out of the high school ranks that ideally they'd want to build that way. But at the end of the day, I think you just look at this position and the way that it's gone, and particularly, and Justin Tell has talked a lot about this with NIL and the impact that it's had on that position. I think it is just something that this is just what reality is, and Georgia's doing its best to adapt to it. But long term, I think they want to get to a place where, yes, you are consistently bringing in elite high school wide receiver prospects. Just because you look at the rest of this roster and the way that they build it, they do that at quarterback. For the most part, they do that at running back. They definitely do it on the offensive and defensive lines. They want to build through high school recruiting when it comes to wide receiver. But I will say the transfer portal, when it comes to who is available, wide receiver does seem to be a position that is readily so.
So if you had to give this position group a grade, you are Professor Connor Riley, and you have to grade them based on right now, what grade would you give them?
I'd give them a B. They've got good depth, and while it hasn't all been proven at Georgia, you have gotten some guys to do some big things and play in some big games. And so I think with Dillon Bell coming back, with Anthony Evans being a guy that I think Georgia really needs his speed to emerge for another season, I think I'd give it a B right now. And, again, I don't know if they have enough to get it to an A, but I think it's going to be on Carson Beck to elevate maybe this wide receiver room as a whole.
So that will be the first part of our spring position preview. We're going to preview more positions for the next 3 weeks.